Welcome to my channel. I really appreciate every single one of you that comes to my channel and subscribes. I'm thankful for everyone that likes my videos, that comments on my videos, and that shares my videos. I really appreciate the traffic. I can't thank you enough. I ran across something on the internet, on YouTube, that I thought was fascinating, and I wanted to show it to you. It's a program called Middle Ground, and this particular one is Black conservatives versus white liberals.
I was chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, yes, where, yeah, that this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then in the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is,
yeah, you're about to see this young man in the white sweatshirt bring up some very valid points. But I wanted to address what this man in the black t-shirt, or the blue t-shirt, said. He said that conservatives want to stress how important it is to have two-family households. Well, it's not just conservatives. Scholars have shown that it's extremely important for children to be raised in a two-parent household. When there's only one parent, the child suffers because they don't have the parenting that they need. They don't have both sexes parenting them, and they also don't have the one sex that is parenting them taking care of them because they're having to earn a living. So those are valid points that conservatives bring up. But I want you to listen to what this young man in the white sweatshirt says, because he knows his history.
agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
Now, this guy Alec is a true white liberal. Listen to what he says.
I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about...
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free,
well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't even know what that means in this scenario.
Now, see, the white liberals' response is, well, then give them the money when the father's in the home. But that's not the way our welfare system works. Back in the 1920s, black families had more two-parent families, households, than whites did. They had a very strong infrastructure. You know what destroyed it? The welfare system. Because the welfare system says, in order for you to get money, there cannot be a husband in the home. So, in order to take care of their families, black men left the home and left the woman alone with the children, because that's how she could get money from the government. Now, whether or not you should be dependent on the government is a whole other question. But the fact is that the reason why giving money to black families hurt them is because it forced the husbands, the male figure, out of the home. And this white liberal clearly doesn't know that or understand it.
Yes.
You're
okay, you
throwing
want to talk about throwing babies
Okay,
out with
let
the
me break this
bathwater?
down for
Margaret
you.
Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what
Okay.
Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath. So,
I'm breathing.
okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but
All
I
right.
am,
Okay.
sadly.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does. Clear.
That's a lie. That is an absolute lie. The conservatives do not want to get rid of welfare. What they want to do is get people who are able-bodied back in the workforce. See, this white liberal obviously hasn't been taught the Bible, because the Bible says in Thessalonians that if you don't work, you don't eat. It's that simple. And even Aesop's fables tell you that, the story of the ant and the grasshopper. The ant stored up food during the summertime. The grasshopper just flitted about enjoying himself. When the winter came, the grasshopper was starving, and he looked at the ants and saw that they were being well fed, and he thought, I should have done what they did. You see, it's one thing to take care of somebody who can't take care of themselves for whatever reason. It's another thing entirely to take care of people that can take care of themselves. The idea that people should have a guaranteed income is an absolute ambition killer. If you're going to pay me just to get up in the morning and eat and sit in my house, then what is my incentive to go out and get a job? There is none. The only thing that would be an incentive for me to get out of the house and go to work would be if I have personally the ambition to go do that. And that's what these white liberals don't understand.
So, giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure.
Not true. Not true.
You're talking about a lottery. You just,
literally
hey, take
can't.
money. But
Yes.
there are strings
Take money.
attached to that money.
Take all the
there
money.
are strings attached
Give
to
them
that
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
money. And that has
thinking
not
that-
happened, though. That has
See? He's not even listening.
happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
No.
It hasn't been a
You're
reparations.
saying
It hasn't been this
so
or that.
what
It has
you're
been a
saying
welfare program,
welfare
Great
was
Societies
designed.
Act, that
Welfare
was built
was-
off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these
So
people
then let
living
them
here.
keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean,
There you go.
I
Notice how he also can't let the conservative black man finish his sentence before he has to interrupt, because he's bound and determined to get his points in, whether they make sense or not.
but I guarantee you,
I guess
there is
so.
no way that
Why
would
would you
happen.
not advocate for that?
So, in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era, and you have policies like redlining that influence how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation, the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start for things. But obviously, we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat.
And also, by the way, they passed gun laws that didn't allow blacks to have guns, so they couldn't defend themselves. So then the whites in the South could run into their neighborhoods and take them out of their homes and lynch them and kill them, because they had no way of defending themselves. It was against the law for them to own guns. And all of this is factual. The Democrats were the ones who founded the KKK. The Democrats were the ones who started the Jim Crow era, who did I can't remember what they call it now, but Southern something, the groups in the cities that worked hard to suppress blacks and to oppress blacks. That was all done by the Democrats. The Democrats fought against the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's right there. The Democrats voted against it. The Republicans voted for it for the most part. There were a few on each side that changed sides, but the bulk of them, the Democrats, voted against giving blacks freedom and giving blacks the same rights that whites have. And then, of course, they claim in the 1960s that the racists all moved to the Republican Party, but that's a joke.
Well, I mean, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party, but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not, like, that's more aligned with, more racist policies in this
very
country.
difficult
Like,
to
very.
Absolutely false. Conservatives do not apply racism to their policies. Their policies are designed to give people freedom, to give them the right to live their lives as they see fit, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their religion, regardless of any other factors. Conservatives want all people to be free. But you see, the liberals fight against that because they want to keep the blacks enslaved to their policies so that they'll vote for the Democrats and keep them in power. That's their whole goal, is to maintain power. They don't care about America. They don't care about black people. They just care about power.
2020s conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the 1v4.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in. That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because of being black. And if anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
I think I'm not going to start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black, I mean, you could pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, the Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week at the University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates and a white student turned to me and jokingly like, "Hey Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college?" And I started asking what he meant, and he said to me that he was like, "You're black, I'm assuming assuming you had decent grades, you could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university. So I was livid by that, and I went off. I started naming all of my accomplishments, and I felt so confident only for about an hour. Because then an hour later, I started saying to myself, like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And
Isn't that amazing? I know that affirmative action was done. Okay, I'm just going to assume it was done for good reasons, okay? They wanted to help black people who they felt had been oppressed. But, as many times good intentions can turn out with bad consequences, affirmative action would cause at least some, for example, this man here in the maroon shirt, to think, did I really qualify for that, or did I just get it because of the color of my skin? You see, affirmative action is racist, plain and simple. It favors one race over another. It says, because you're black, you should have the right to go to a school, even if you're not qualified, because you're black. That's what affirmative action is. And the end result is that you have people like him who wonder, did I really qualify? Was I really qualified? Would I have gotten into this on my own merits? Because everyone wants to think that they've earned their way into what they have. But when you put that doubt in their minds, it affects them, sometimes for an entire life.
seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time.
Yeah.
But now it's like anybody, if you have the skills to do it and you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took, that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. It's just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like why do they ask all that stuff?
Isn't it interesting that this liberal girl is talking like that?
Affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace?
Yep, Mr. Flamin' Liberal. We got to keep it. We got to keep it.
White wealth and compare it to black wealth totals. White people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita.
50 times? Not according to this graphic. It's like twice as much. Still bad, but it's not 50 times. But liberals love to embellish and add on to and expand the statistics to help support their points of view.
So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see
Curious,
that.
why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing.
See? For him, it's all about race. He's got to do something to pay for the sins of his ancestors. So silly.
Economic abilities,
desire to
skills.
go, desire to.
I mean, zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Government assistance program.
That would be because the vast majority of black people live in cities that are run by Democrats. And the Democrats have done a great job of keeping those people trapped in the inner city through their policies. But we can't talk about that.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
relevant.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless,
You mean
the ability
parent.
to even get to college.
You mean
Yeah,
two-parent?
the child, yes, but a two-parent household
Yeah.
in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to being sent into prison by doing crime.
And all of this is well documented in the scholarly literature.
Or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush. And maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe, can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
I'll tell you how you could easily solve the problem for the poor blacks in the inner cities. You could do it with the snap of a finger. Just put people into positions of power in those cities that don't believe that blacks need the government's help to survive, that don't believe that blacks can't earn a living on their own, that don't believe that blacks can't learn when they go to school. Those are the racist thoughts behind the policies that Democrats who run the inner cities think. That's what they believe. And it all has its roots in the past, where they came from the Ku Klux Klan, from the hatred of black people. You can hear it in their speech.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth, in fact. I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were, before affirmative action, could just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is the perfect example, regardless of what you think about him. He was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because, it focused on finding people that were, again, just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed and I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire,
Yes, it is how it works. He just doesn't want to hear it. He's got a thick head.
Board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever, on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
Tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Diversity hire.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's not.
Notice that? See what he did? When they pointed out the tokenism, he said, oh, that's just not true. But then when they continued to talk about it and showed examples of it, then he goes, oh, let me switch my argument.
And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in
Yes,
this
there
country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy.
Elon Musk is destroying Twitter because he's allowing people to speak freely. That's the liberal definition. The liberal definition of destroying things is when you allow people to express their opinion.
That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black.
Look at this. An Asian will need 140 SAT points higher than whites, 320 SAT points higher than Hispanics, and 450 SAT points higher than African Americans. Wow.
Student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, etc., that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
so
that too, though.
Those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you
I don't know,
actually.
what
Yeah, the wrong numbers. Yeah, let's look at the wrong numbers. Okay, Mr. Liberal.
wrong numbers.
about.
No
The
number
issue
is
is poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks. It
Maybe we
shouldn't
should
matter
make
who's
college
in it.
free, and maybe we want to have
If you have a
affirmative action
program-
wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
Again, the liberal solution to everything is make it all free. Nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for it. And if it isn't the individual that's enjoying the benefit of it, it's going to be someone else. The taxpayers. And guess what? There is a limited amount of money that you can get out of taxpayers. They're already stretching the limits.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Trump supports Black lives.
This is where it gets really interesting. I'm going to cut it off here. I'll put the link in the description. And you're welcome to watch the whole thing yourself, but you can imagine how the liberals react to Trump. They just hate the guy. Now, I personally don't care for him. I think he's rude, he's loud, he's obnoxious, but he certainly did good things for the country when he was in office. And yes, I voted for him. I'm not too excited about him running in 2024 because I just think he's not someone who's going to heal divisions. He's someone who's going to create greater divisions because he's so polarizing, not because of anything he does, but because the liberals hate him so badly that they'll make up stuff about him, they'll lie about him constantly, and they'll smear every single conservative with the same brush, which you'll see if you watch that segment of this. But the point is, you got a bunch of conservative blacks talking to white liberals, and the white liberals are trying really hard to convince the blacks that they need the government to take care of them, that they can't possibly survive on their own, which is absolutely ridiculous. I've known very many successful blacks who didn't need any help from the government to survive, and in fact were sick and tired of the government meddling in their lives. And if you look at the black family in general, the government has not benefited the black family in general. What the government has done has destroyed the black family through abortion, which is overwhelmingly kills black babies more than any other race, and through welfare, which splits up the family and causes the children to be raised in single-parent households, and causes the men to go wander around on the street because they can't get a job, because if they do, their wife will no longer get money. It's absolutely ridiculous what the government has done. Lots to think about here, lots to consider. I hope you'll take the time to listen to the whole thing. And I pray that you will be abundant, that you will be healthy, that you'll live a long life, and that God will keep you safe. I pray that He'll do the same for every single person that you love. And I pray that you will be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, you will let your requests be made known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet, out.